Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport. James, it's nice that you have returned.
Bonjour, monsieur. Oui bien. Très bien. Yeah, sorry everyone, I've been away in France for the last week or so with the family, so I've missed Luke and John talking all things golf and betting. Two very good podcasts. If you've not listened to them, I do highly recommend. They're on our channels and social media and everything like that. But yeah, how are you, Luke?
Tired, but the joys of half term, James, with three young children. Um, yeah, you got something to live up to now, James. You know, record numbers with John in tow. But all jokes aside, I don't think anyone would have watched this weekend's games without thinking about you and Arne Slot.
What can I say? Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day. I mean, you briefly texted me on Friday and said, what do you think the team would be for Liverpool? And I said, actually, one game I didn't really care about. We weren't going to win the FA Cup. And it didn't really make a difference. All Liverpool at the end of this season is trying to get top five, somehow trying to get top five. That game was just the worst I've seen Liverpool play since the Hodgson and Rodgers era, the back end of their eras and their 10 years at manager of the club. Slot's on his way out. It's either Thursday morning or it's next Wednesday morning when they get spanked by PSG in the Champions League. The players clearly gave up after they conceded the first goal. They didn't play too badly for the first 20-25 minutes, but let's put it into context. Trafford in goal really didn't have that much to do. Yeah, Mo Salah should have scored. Great tackle by Kuzinov, who actually has improved enormously after I gave him an absolute shellacking on this show in November, December sometime. Still don't think he's great. His pace is a massive attribute for him, and that's why he's playing a lot at the moment. To increase their high line at City, they can play a lot higher with him in the team. He got that tackle on Mo Salah, and then Ekitike had half a chance, more than half a chance, didn't take it. And then, Virgil van Dijk mistake, and 1-0, and it was game over. Liverpool just gave up. The players gave up. Virgil admitted that on Sunday in an interview that came out on Sunday yesterday. And pathetic, disgraceful, you name it. Every adjective you can think of in the English dictionary, it was there in plain sight on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, shocking. Entirely predictable, though.
I think that's the. Well, it's not surprising. I mean, we've been talking about Slot now since November, and how the players haven't had the right attitude for a lot of games, particularly the less important games. The worry comes in games like this where you expect the players to be, banging up for want of a better word. And whilst they were to start with, the manner of the giving up, it's just not good enough. And honestly, I don't think Van Dijk making the comments he did helps him, because he's one of these defenders who, when things are going great, he makes the game look so easy, and when he's slightly off, he looks lazy and disinterested, and nothing much changes. But it's just his style of play, and it just looks like he doesn't care. And it's not for the first time this year that's been labelled against him. He was unbelievable last year, but when he can't be making the comments he's making, I don't think, and it's just surely a matter of time before Slot goes. As we say, with no logical replacements at this time of the season, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, even if they go out against Paris Saint-Germain, I think they'll wait until the summer and hope they can sneak that top 5 place.
Disagree. I think if they go out to PSG in any sort of, they'll sack him. And I wouldn't be surprised if they appoint Rob Page, who's the current under-21 coach, and maybe even looking at getting back Johnny Heitinger back in. I know he's out of work. He left under Frank at Tottenham, albeit there were some rumours, weren't they, that after his sacking at Ajax and earlier on, that Slot wanted him back. I can't see him lasting Thursday morning, to be honest. If they get beat 3-4-5-0 against PSG, which is entirely possible and could happen, then how can you justify keeping him in the role? Because the Champions League is gone. You got a huge game against Fulham, and Liverpool's running, as we've discussed and everyone knows about, is pretty tough. Fulham on Saturday, not an easy game, and then Everton away, the Hill Dickinson Stadium. You wouldn't fancy anything there at the moment where Everton are playing. I know they've got a terrible record at home, but they'll fancy their chances big time. Still got to play United away, Chelsea at home, Villa away, Brentford, Palace. It's that unbeaten run that all the media came out in January. This great unbeaten run when they played Leeds, Burnley, Sunderland, etc. Yeah, it's a mess at the moment.
But I think that's a good point in that we touched on at the time that, they were poor performances, they were poor results actually as well, all those draws, and they catch up with you sort of later in the season when you do actually have to play the decent teams. And it was just masking a lot of, issues that were there. And, you can't be looking forward to Paris Saint-Germain in midweek.
I might be watching the other game on Wednesday night. But
don't worry, James, I will message you every time Paris Saint-Germain score if you want.
I don't want 10 messages during a game, thanks very much. But yeah, they could have a field day. But it sounds silly, we're talking about it, but you never know in football. Liverpool got battered in Paris last season, absolutely battered. Apart from an amazing performance by Alisson Becker in goal and a lucky Harvey Elliott goal when Donnarumma really should have saved it, if we're being honest with ourselves. Yeah, it's... but some of the screenshots and some of the watching the game and highlights again of the game on Saturday quickly from the Liverpool perspective, they were wide open, and Slot was saying, we had to go on double up almost on Doku. Well, that's just basic football. They didn't bother trying. I haven't seen the running stats from the game, but I don't even want to see it. But on City's performance, they were easy. Harden, he scores. The header's brilliant header. He outmuscles Konate. It's a great header, to be fair to him. And then it's, Semenyo is a good finish. Not sure what Mamardashvili's doing. Easy goal, but that was weak as well. And then Harden scored to make a hat-trick, and they took the foot off the gas completely. They just the game's over, we can just walk through this game. And it was nice to see, actually, Mike Oliver, who, by the way, had an absolute shocker of a game, by the way. The one that really, really wound me up, that shouldn't have wound me up, was when Semenyo handled the ball, right? And it's a clear booking. It's on the pitch, and he gives it as a throw-in to Liverpool. It's just absolute nonsense. One of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time. He just blows up after 90 minutes. Doesn't even go anything. I know it's a UEFA directive, you're allowed to do it, but everyone was like, hang on a minute here, what's going on? The game's over, obviously. But and one last point on that game. Have you ever seen a penalty never not going to be scored when Salah missed it?
It was pathetic, honestly.
Yeah.
It was
almost like I want the manager sacked.
Just quickly on Liverpool. So, something we have touched on before is media coverage. And I think something we touched on earlier this year is how protected Slot has seemed to be from some of the journalists in and around the sort of Liverpool camp. There's clearly a lot of people who have access to information. The club is feeding a lot of that information. It's interesting how the tide is beginning to eventually turn a little bit against Slot. Slot's been very fortunate, I think, not to be under more pressure than he is. And the problem is the masses lap up what the media say. If the media are saying he's not under pressure, they tend to go with that rather than actually seeing what's actually happening on the pitch.
Yeah, you can see it tied. It's certainly the last 24 hours, they've said, as I said earlier, about the Champions League. But we know that. We know that the two people that run Liverpool media, who are employed by Liverpool, work for Liverpool, give the narrative out to the journalists who cover Liverpool. So, yeah, it's a mess. After winning champions, being the champions 20th time last season to where we are now is quite a remarkable fall. And I'll hear all about this. We're not a sacking club. We talked about it before. They have sacked everyone. And sometimes you know in life that things shouldn't be what they are and you'd have to move on. And it should have been moved on in November. They got beaten 4-1 at home to PSV and then 3-0 at home on the Saturday to Sean Dyche's Nottingham Forest, and he stayed in a job.
But I think what's interesting is, so that happens, and everyone goes, "Oh, no knee-jerk reactions." But I think what we try and do on this show, I think it look a little bit deeper than just results. The underlying performances have been so poor all year, really.
Calendar
and I
year.
think that's what's been interesting.
The calendar year since that Carabao Cup final.
So anyway, I'm bored of talking Slot. Let's talk just Chelsea briefly. Obviously, they got a dream FA Cup quarter-final tie against Port Vale, who were bottom of League One. They've obviously smashed them 7-0. Just a couple of points with regard to that game. So one was the fifth goal from Santos. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was from a corner, and the keeper's clearly fouled, Gauchi. And no fouls given. VAR, I don't know if VAR looked at it or not. Not given. And it just gets to a point where one of the problems I have with these things is when there's a clear foul, like that one on the keeper, not given, it almost means it's acceptable going forward that those are no longer judged to be fouls. And so what you end up with is, as a fan, is next week that one will be given, and the week after it might not be given, and there's a whole level of inconsistency. I suspect if that game had been 0-0, the decision may have been different or taken more seriously. But because it's the fifth goal, it's almost like, they can't be bothered to even look at it. It was clearly a foul, and I don't know why it irritated me sort of disproportionately, because it's just such a poor decision.
Right. It's just a foul, isn't it? It's almost like they just can't be bothered dealing with the process of not giving a foul, and just think, as you said, the game's over. It's 4-0 Chelsea. It's obviously they're going to go through anyway. 5-0. Let's just get on with it and let the game flow. Don't waste time. Don't highlight the mistake from the referee on the pitch to start with. Let's just move on. No one will talk about it in the media. Blah blah blah, and they'll just get on with it. And just like, no, make the right decision. It's not even a hard decision. We talk about it on the show. Sometimes it's black and white, yes or no, and that is a classic example of that's a bad decision, a wrong decision, and they just ignore it. And it's just like, why? Why are you ignoring it? I don't understand.
And the problem with this as well is that they'll go away and they'll monitor that referee's performance, and it probably won't. Obviously it's different because you haven't got the Premier League panel deciding whether it was a bad decision or not, given it was the FA Cup. But it's those types of decisions where they'll justify it and they'll say, there probably wasn't enough to overturn it and all this sort of stuff, when there clearly was. It was clearly a poor mistake. And, you look at the end of the season, the number of, poor refereeing decisions or poor VAR interventions and these sorts of things. And this would be almost an example of one that doesn't get flagged up. And you're going, what? The whole thing's a nonsense. So one thing about Chelsea, since we last spoke, I realise it's been a few days in terms of this podcast, is obviously we had the incident with Enzo Fernandez and the comments he made that saw Rosenior keep him out of that Port Vale game. He also was going to miss the Manchester City game. He effectively was intimating, I think he would quite like to join Real Madrid. I don't quite know what planet he's on, thinking that, suddenly he's 100 million. I know they spent 100 million pounds on him. He hasn't played anywhere near those levels, I don't think. And the idea that Real Madrid would buy him seems fanciful at best. But he hasn't been the only player at Chelsea. So Casado's been talking in the media. Cucurella, who actually got benched for, I use the word benched loosely. Hato obviously played ahead of him against Port Vale. That can easily be just to give Hato a chance. But, you can't be making all these comments. And it just strikes me as if the Chelsea dressing room is a pretty unhappy place at the moment.
Yeah, so 2 points from that. As I said, I think Enzo's got living in cow cookie land if he thinks he's going to Real Madrid and playing in that Real Madrid team. I know they're a bit of a mess at the moment, Madrid in the league especially. He's not replacing Bellingham in his perspective role he wants to play. So Do you think he's going to play for Atletico Madrid with Diego Simeone? Will he be there anyway in come the summer, Simeone after 14 years at Atletico? I think that's strong leadership from Rossinho, actually. Just to say, hang on a minute here, you have been my captain, obviously, because Reece James is carrying his hamstring injury, his latest injury. So he's made him, or he is the vice captain essentially there. It's strong leadership. When I first heard of it, I thought it's just easy for the Port Vale game, makes no difference, blah, blah, blah. But to actually give him a 2-game ban, I think that's actually pretty good from Rossinho. It stamps a little bit of authority in the dressing room and to the fans as well that I'm in charge here. Whether that's true or not, whatever, it's still out there to say, yeah, I can drop players, not just for a Mickey Mouse FA Cup quarter-final. It is against obviously, the second place team, Man City, a game that they kind of need to get something out of it, Chelsea, this coming weekend. But we talked about it. When they gave Reece James a 6-year contract on X amount of money, probably the best part was 300 grand, and you give him 8-year contracts to buy players like Caicedo and Palmer, Cucurella, etc., they're only going to be on 100 grand a week. That's how they're amortising the contract over that amount of time. These players will know that they probably deserve 250, 300 grand a week when they're seeing their peers on that, and their agents, whoever they are, maybe it's Pini Sihavi or whoever it is, Mendes, the super agents, are going, well, I can get you this at other clubs. So that's the noise. And they want Champions League football. And at the moment, they're in a 50-50 battle with Liverpool to get Champions League. Because they ain't finishing fourth after behind United and Villa, are they? So they've got some big issues, let alone their financial as a club issues off the pitch as well. So yeah, it's a big last few weeks for Chelsea on and off the pitch.
I definitely think, based on the financial numbers that came out last week, that Champions League spot is looking more and more important, and it does have the feel that Chelsea are going to have to sell some, a couple of big players to balance the books somewhere along the line. We'll have to.
They
wait
aren't the
and
only
see.
club, are they?
No, but one of the problems is I don't know how many buyers there are. You only have to look at the numbers across the board. They are horrendous for every football club, and I just wonder at what point the money to spend big on transfer fees dries up, unless you're truly an elite player. And the problem Chelsea have got is that what they don't want to do is lose a Caicedo. They don't want to lose a Esteval. It's one thing if you manage to offload a Fernandes. You don't really care, honestly. You don't want to be losing your genuine superstars.
Yeah, I briefly spoke to you off this podcast, obviously, back end of last year, maybe 18 months ago, about whether you see teams doing swap deals to get around this issue kind of thing. And it never really materialised. And one of it comes back, you do a swap for a swap, a player rather than financially doing it. I don't know how if it works financially for the rules, PSR and cost ratio issues, but I don't know, would agents, because we know how much agents control players and control clubs, you know what I mean? So,
well, I think that was one of the other big takeaways from last week. It feels like it's been so long since we've done a podcast, so much has happened, but was the agents' fees got released last week, and Chelsea were obviously miles clear. Obviously Villa were second in that list, which was not great given how few players have actually bought, but obviously Chelsea were incredibly high in that list. Not incredibly high, they were top, and they were miles clear of everyone else.
I think 20 million clear of Villa, weren't they? They were 60 odd million pounds, weren't they?
It's nearer 25, I think. Yeah, they were miles clear. And the problem is, teams know, agents know now that Chelsea are a bit of a soft touch, and they'll fill their boots come this summer. They love transfers at Chelsea, and the only person who gets rich from that is the agents.
Yeah, big few weeks for Chelsea.
Let's so 4's quadruple, 3's treble. What are we down to now? We're down to a double?
Well, it can't be the original double because they're out of the FA Cup. The original double, isn't it? There's the title and the FA Cup is the original double. So they can only win the Premier League and the Champions League.
So obviously we are talking Arsenal. I took no pleasure in watching Southampton score that late winner against them. I took no pleasure in texting my Arsenal friends when that happened. No pleasure at all, James. Just quite amusing generally. I don't know what to say really. It was obviously quite a tricky tie, and obviously Arteta's rested a few players. There was lots of contention before the game as to who would be fit for Arsenal. They'd picked up a couple of niggles and this sort of stuff. But the reality is they don't actually have that many injuries, and it's amazing what happens to Arsenal when they haven't got a fully fit fully fit first team, and they don't score from set pieces. That first goal from a set piece.
And when you actually have to dominate a game rather than sit back and just hit people on a counter-back or, as you say, set pieces. Yeah, the narrative's changing, isn't it? Even Arteta saying in his press conference for a Champions League game tomorrow night, saying, yeah, we need to improve, etc., etc. It's a bad result, that really is. They're lucky that they're so far clear in the Premier League, and they've got a relatively easy quarter-final in Champions League, because the narrative could have got very nasty very quickly. If they were only 5 or 6 points ahead and they were playing a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid or a PSG tomorrow night, suddenly the noise gets and the pressure ramps up tenfold. And I said it to him, it blew in my face, Arteta is a bottler. He's an absolute bottle job as a manager. Go back and look at the past history of him being the manager at Arsenal Football Club. This is, into his 6th year now at Arsenal? Obviously, he's won nothing. He's won a COVID FA Cup under Emery's team, and he's won nothing else. And he didn't really bottle the Carabao Cup final. He didn't. City played well, but they were favourites. Obviously, beaten on Saturday night, they were favourites. And the pressure is on. It is massively on, because they've got a tough game on Saturday against Bournemouth at 12:30 game as well. Let's see how they do. And you can't take your foot off the pedal. And they kind of did. Southampton are in great form. I think they're unbeaten in 15, aren't they? Southampton, 7th in the Championship before today's game. So they've done very well after sacking Will Steele early on in the season, the ex-manager there. So fair play Southampton. Brilliant result, brilliant performance, and scored 2 brilliant goals, to be fair to them.
But Southampton were missing players themselves. It wasn't a case of them having a fully fit squad, and I think that'd be where Arsenal will be so disappointed. Is they should be controlling these games a little bit better than they are, and it's just I don't know. It just seems to struggle. It does feel like an enormous 6 days or so, 5 days, 6 days in the reign of Arteta in terms of his legacy. Because, if they don't turn up against Sporting now, or they don't get a result against Bournemouth, the pressure is gonna go through the roof. It's one thing, back-to-back games getting taken out of the Carabao Cup, FA Cup. You start messing up the Champions League, and give City hope in the title race. That pressure could get pretty ugly pretty quickly.
And if I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't have any confidence in Arteta, unfortunately. He's looking at his history, just look at it. It's, they've bottled a lot of things. I know it's a generic thing, but they have done a lot of bottled things. But you've got to give credit to Southampton. A fantastic performance, fantastic win. Great to see a Championship side in semi-finals. Tough game next though.
So let's talk about the other quarter-final, which threatened to be a bit of a damp squib, and then turned out to be a bit of a belter. Obviously Leeds went 2-0 up. West Ham looked dead and buried, scored twice in injury time pretty much to pull it back. And then we had goals disallowed for offside, West Ham, which would have been to win it. Was, I can't remember extra time. And then penalties. Just a crazy game. It was just pure entertainment, FA Cup.
I did like the tweet from the West Ham supporters club or union, whatever it was, during the at the end of the game, you're not allowed back in the stadium due to safety. After all, a lot of fans trying to run back in to go and watch the extra time. Obviously, when you leave the stadium, you're not allowed back in, lads and girls. So yeah, and then the young keeper who came on to replace Areola, sorry. Arbeloa is the Real Madrid manager, obviously. Who was playing non-league football about 3 weeks ago, kind of thing, came on. One thing, like, I saw Daniel Farke made a great point. A safety officer before the game decided that if there were going to be penalties, it had to be at the West Ham end because he was worried about the reaction of 9,000 Leeds fans. One, that's ridiculous. And two, they're miles away at the Olympic Stadium. They're in a different postcode. They're not next to the pitch. They're like past the running track and about 100 feet away. And to decide that, and actually West Ham decided we'll do a toss of a coin. They just went, that's absolute rubbish. I think Jared Bowen at the time, the captain, they went, no, we'll do a toss of a coin where the end is and then toss a coin who takes the first penalty kind of thing. But that safety officer needs to collect his P45 on Tuesday morning, please, because that's unacceptable. That's just not on. But Leeds, the first time in FA Cup semi-final since, 1987, if not beforehand or something like that, I read earlier. Something ridiculous like that. So yeah, so they've improved so much, haven't they, since they changed that formation, Daniel Farke, to 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, however you want to call it. They have just changed their fortunes. They were looking dead and buried with Burnley and Wolves. And I know they're still in a relegation fight. But that tactical masterstroke, can you call it? But it has been. They've changed the way they play. You've got some fighting spirit, and they've been brilliant for the last 3 or 4 months, Leeds. I know they've had a couple of setbacks, but that's what happened when you're in this league and you're down at the bottom. But generally, since the turn of the year, they've been brilliant, Leeds.
I mean, I think one of the problems Leeds have got is, and you talk to Leeds fans before the season, and it was obvious they were very short in forward areas in terms of actual quality. They signed Calvert-Lewin, who's done pretty well for them, but there's still a lack of quality in those forward areas. So it'd be interesting in the summer, if they do stay up, what they can do to actually address, scoring more goals, because defensively they look pretty sound, for large numbers of games. I thought West Ham was interesting because what I couldn't quite get my head around was what sort of lineup they would go with. I was hoping that they may have learnt a little bit from the previous round against Brentford where Somerville got injured. It still amazes me, that we saw a West Ham team with the likes of Bowen starting, given, the predicament they're in terms of Premier League. They have a game on Friday against Wolves. Massive game, and you find this massive disconnect between what the fans want and what the club wants. The fans all want to go to Wembley, have an FA Cup, and I heard who was it the other day? I heard someone on the radio say the other day, "Oh, I'd much rather win the FA Cup and get relegated." It's like, really, but yeah, it was. They ended up going a bit stronger almost than I thought they might, West Ham, and maybe they'll get away with it. But I just don't know what these clubs are doing.
See, I have to take point in this game. I can understand why they did, because they just had an international break, and if they didn't play for 2.5, 3 weeks, they kind of want the rhythm to play in a game of football, and they've got Wolves. If they were playing, if it was just continuous game and there wasn't an international break, then I agree, make wholesale changes and whatever. But this game, I think you needed to play your players. Remember, they're not playing in Europe as well. I think you needed to get back the players. Had a 2-week break. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you didn't. In this game instance, I can kind of understand why they did it. Just could have had 2 weeks off, and they wanted to get. It's tricky. It is a very difficult balance, but I get why they did it this week.
Look, I guess the proof in the pudding will be Friday evening.
Tough game.
Must win game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's enough look at the FA Cup. Obviously,
so
in terms
of the FA Cup draw, isn't it? It's Man City versus Southampton, Chelsea Leeds, 24th, 25th of April at Wembley. Why is it at Wembley? I know it's been going on for so long, but please go back to Villa Park or an Old Trafford or somewhere like that. Make it the magic of the FA Cup at Wembley. But anyway, yeah, moving on.
So we did see some important games in the Scottish Premier League this weekend. We saw Rangers beat Dundee United on Saturday 4-2, and then on the Sunday we saw Celtic beat Dundee 2-1, and Hearts could only draw with Livingston 2-2. What it means is that Hearts have 67 points, Rangers 66, Celtic 64. Now, obviously, there's only one regular season game left before they go into the additional fixtures that they have. Rangers are now favourites for the title. It does feel like Hearts have blown it a little bit. I'll be impressed if they're able to turn things around, to be honest.
They need to keep 11 players on the pitch. And now they're sending off at the weekend. They're like Chelsea of Scottish football, always playing with 10 men. Yeah, keep 11 players on, lads. You might actually not draw a game, you might win a game. Yeah, it's great if you've got 3 teams fighting for the title, and you say one game left of regular season before they split the 2. I think it's 6 and 6, isn't it? So yeah, so 1 game's left there in Scotland.
So Championship big games today. I actually watched quite a bit of the Sheffield Wednesday Leicester City game. It was Sheffield Wednesday scored early, and it was pretty much all Leicester. And it was a great goal by Ayew in the end, but it was. I think the bigger point is that Leicester are in a whole world of trouble. They were probably fortunate that the Portsmouth Oxford game earlier in the day ended up with Pompey getting a late equaliser, despite being down to 10 men. But Leicester are slap bang in trouble. I think they're even money now to get relegated. They've not got easy games to come either, fixture wise. So, that the bottom of that Championship table looks interesting, to put mildly.
Yeah, just running through the scores today. So you had Blackburn 0, West Brom 0. Top of the table, you had Millwall lost 1-2 at home to Norwich, 2-1 at home to Norwich even. Bristol City beat Sheffield United 1-0, Derby 2, Stoke 0. Ipswich continued their fine form. They beat Birmingham 2-1. Luke, you'll be annoyed about that result, I'm sure. Preston drew 1-1 to Queen's Park Rangers. Watford 1-1 Charlton. Swansea 2-2 against Middlesbrough, faltering well. And Hull City drew 0-0 against Coventry tonight in a game that people must have watched there, because that was a decent game on paper, but 0-0. So Coventry have still got 84 points. They've got 5 games left. They're pretty much certain to win that league. Ipswich moved into second with 72 points, ahead of Middlesbrough and Millwall on the same points, ahead on goal difference, but they've got 2 games in hand, Ipswich, so they've still got 7 to play. Yeah, 7 to play. And Hull and Wrexham have moved into the top 6. Southampton obviously got 2 games in hand of everyone else as well. So yeah, so shake things up at the top. But yeah, as you say, at the bottom, obviously Sheffield Wednesday lost. I mean, their record, by the way, is hilarious. I know they've been taking away a load of points, but played 41, won 1.
I mean that's the crazy thing about how bad a result it was for Leicester today. I mean, that's an absolute shocker. They are the whipping boys of any division this year.
They've won 1 game.
But if you're not winning against them, who are you going to beat?
They've scored 25 goals in 41 games. Anyway, quickly, Oxford have got 41, Leicester have got 41, Portsmouth 42, but a game in hand with 6 to play. West Brom 45, Blackburn 47, Charlton 49. Yeah, so Leicester in all kinds of trouble.
I think Leicester's next game is away at Portsmouth.
Just double check that for you. No, Leicester play actually home to Swansea this Saturday, but I think they'll be away. Oh, are they playing midweek? There's no midweek games. Portsmouth do play Leicester, you're quite rightly, on Saturday the 18th of April at 12:30. That is now a massive game of football, yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. If Portsmouth win their game in hand as well, we'll get a point from the game in hand. It starts putting huge pressure on Leicester. But anyway, funny games in the Championship. Any European football catch your eye, James?
Yeah, just Bayern Munich in Germany. They won 3-2 at Freiburg. They were 2-0 down with 10 minutes to go. And they scored 3 goals with the last minute winner from Lennart Karl, the 18-year-old superstar midfielder, scored in the 99th minute for Munich. No Harry Kane there. He's a doubt for tomorrow night's Champions League game. Dortmund beat Stuttgart. Only keep an eye on Stuttgart because there are rumours about Hoynes and Liverpool there. So Munich are still 9 points clear in Germany with 6 games to go. In Serie A over the weekend, Inter beat Roma 5-2 last night, got back to winning ways. Udinese drew with Cesc Fabregas's Como 0-0. Juventus won 2-0 at home to Genoa, and tonight Napoli scored a 78th minute winner at home to AC Milan. So they won 1-0 at home to AC Milan, against AC Milan even. So Inter on 72 and Napoli are ahead on goal, not goal difference, on head-to-heads against AC Milan at the moment on 65, with Como in 4th. In France, PSG obviously played Friday night because they want their players to have a little bit of a rest before spanking Liverpool on Wednesday night. And then they obviously don't play Saturday either. They won 3-1 at home to Toulouse, while Lille beat Lens 3-0. So PSG are 4 points clear with 2 games in hand. I mean, it was kind of fun for a couple of weeks, but PSG obviously going to, I think, 1 game in hand, but they've got to play them as well because the game was supposed to be this weekend. Obviously being postponed because PSG run French football, we know that. And in La Liga, big change there. Mallorca beat Madrid 2-1. So that's Arbeloa's 5th defeat, I think, there in 19 games for Madrid. Xavi Alonso lost 6 out of 34, just to put it into perspective. They've lost 11 games, I think, this season, Madrid already. Not good for a standard 11. They lost 2-1. And Atletico Madrid played Barcelona on Saturday night. Atletico won Barcelona 2. Atletico were down to 10 men. Lewandowski scored the winner there for Barcelona. Bit of controversy where Barcelona should have a player sent off. VAR didn't give it, and they've kind of admitted it was a wrong decision. So it's not only just the Premier League it doesn't. The VAR is bad. It happens all over across Europe. So Barcelona 7 clear. Obviously they play Wednesday night against each other. They played each other in the cup as well. So they're going to play 6 times against Atletico this season. So yeah, they might know each other by the end of that. By the end of next Tuesday night. 6 times in the season is a lot to play each other.
So let's just touch on one quick story I saw that was quite interesting. It looks like Bernardo Silva is going to be leaving Manchester City at the end of the season. He's obviously been a massive player for the City team, and slightly surprising in as much as you'd think he has probably another season in him, in terms of in that City lineup. Maybe not playing as much, but I'm interested. I'm intrigued to see where he'll go. Any thoughts?
I'd be careful about Bernardo Silva because as a player, he's been unbelievable. Unbelievable. The way he came into the Premier League was almost a wide forward off the right-hand side, and in the last 18 months has redeveloped himself to be a centre midfielder. He's brilliant. He's the on-field general for Pep Guardiola. He's brilliant first touch, control, movement, knows exactly what he's doing. But he's an absolute, I can't repeat, children might be watching, but he's an absolute, you know what I'm going to say. He's just a snidey little so-and-so. He gets away with absolute shocking things on the pitch as well like this. He winds up opposition players, winds up opposition fans. And I'll never forget when Liverpool won the title and he refused to clap and all this business and just showed us what he actually is on the field. But he's a winner, isn't he? He is a fantastic player. Where do I think he'll go? Could he go to PSG and have a bit of coin in Paris? He's too good a player to go to Saudi at the moment.
No, I don't see him going to Paris Saint-Germain because I think they're set in midfield, in terms of, he wouldn't start for them if they're all fully fit, and then you also, in terms of Zaire Emery and things like that is, he's the future. Bernardo Silva isn't. I was thinking more
No, but
whether
sure,
he'd
but
go
he's
back
not.
to Spain, Portugal.
But the money isn't there, isn't it? That's the thing. He's
Well,
probably on
he's not going to
300.
he's not going to cost anything in terms of transfer fees.
Yeah, but he'll want a huge wage. I mean, yeah, he could go to Italy. It would suit him. He went to go and play for Inter or someone like that. He's too good a player to go and play in Saudi at the moment. I don't think he wants to. He's far too good a player to be there. Still got an awful lot to give at the highest level for the next couple of years at least anyway. So, yeah, he's been a fantastic player. Don't like the bloke one iota. Obviously, I don't know him, but it's just... I'd love
It's
him on
okay.
Liverpool's side, though. He's an absolute
It's
winner.
okay. It's okay, James. He doesn't like you either, so
I
he'll
know.
he'll sleep easy tonight.
But
Let's
that's
talk.
one thing. One thing that he is good at. He does. He's a winner, and he will get in in your faces. Yeah, so he's been a brilliant player for City.
Let's talk Champions League European action this week. So we're into quarter-final stages. Tuesday night we've got Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Sporting Lisbon, Arsenal. Wednesday night we've got Paris Saint-Germain, Liverpool, Barcelona, Atletico. I mean, three very good games. Obviously, the weakest one is obviously Sporting versus Arsenal. I mean, we did touch on it briefly earlier. I think it's just a massive game for Arsenal, and it's going to be interesting from a Sporting perspective because it feels like they need to get something in this game. A draw doesn't feel like enough. They need to be winning this game. So it's going to be a fascinating, match. It looks like Gabriel will be fit. It doesn't look like Arsenal are going to be missing too many players for this particular game.
Yeah, Gyökeres obviously going back to his former club as well. Rice back, Zubimendi back, Odegaard back, Saka will start. Gyökeres obviously talked about Gabriel, Saliba. They'll have all their mysterious injuries. Won't be around obviously, but it is the easiest draw for Arsenal could get. But Sporting finished, I think, fifth, didn't they, in the league? Or was it fifth or seventh? I know, the top eight, obviously, weren't they? So, they've been decent. They're on the, obviously, top.
But they're not even top of. They're not even top of the Portuguese league.
They're not top of.
Porto are top.
Yeah. So, need to put. But yeah, they do need to get a result because you fancy Arsenal taking them back, and if it's a draw, then you just fancy Arsenal's physicality to beat them at the Emirates next week, just to overpower them, kind of thing. Even at set pieces, we know what they're like. Everyone knows about that. So yeah.
I think what you want is if you're Sporting, you want a little bit of jeopardy. You want Arsenal fans to be nervous.
Yeah, and Arsenal need to get out of the rot. But you can see Arsenal just going there and just hitting him on the counter attack and getting a couple of cheap goals, and they're away and gone. And it's tie over kind of thing. But Arsenal do need to put out. Do you think a performance or just a result for them at the moment? Feels like they need a performance just to get a little bit of confidence back into the club, or is it just at this stage of the season it's just a don't care, win a game, move on, get out of here?
I just think at this time of year, results.
Yeah, agree with you. Yeah.
You don't get anything for good performance. You don't get 3 points for a good performance.
It's just more confidence, isn't it, in the team and in the fans. You go there and you play badly and you lose 1-0 kind of thing, or you scrape a 1-1 like they did in the last round in a dodgy penalty that you got given. They didn't play well when the last round, did they, at all, Arsenal? And they got that extremely dodgy penalty and then they went home and against Leverkusen.
And I guess the Sporting game's interesting in as much as, they played Bodo Glimt last round. They overturned that 3-0 deficit from the first leg, which in itself is a shocker. You can't be losing 3-0, really, to Bodo Glimt. But they did then absolutely wallop them 5-0. So it's just quite an interesting, footnote ahead of that game.
Yep. It won't be the game I'll have on the TV. I'm actually going out with a couple of Arsenal fans. Well, one Arsenal fan, a couple of Tottenham fans tomorrow night. So I wonder who. We've been saying that the pub is only showing the other game, which is Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich, the heavyweight clash, and not the Arsenal game. So sure, though the Real Madrid game, Bayern Munich game is going to be brilliant. I mean, it's all about Harry Kane if he's fit. I know he's travelled today to go to Madrid. Would they risk him? 'Cause I don't think Nicholas Jackson is a bad replacement kind of thing. I don't think he's. I know they've still got a decent player up front.
But okay, do they need to be that great to beat this Real Madrid team? I
No,
don't think they
that's the
do.
thing. They don't.
You know, this
Madrid
is
bad.
the worst. This is the worst Real Madrid team I can remember for, particularly with the injuries. So the current team that they're rolling out, it just looks bang average, which makes that City performance even more of a shocker.
Well, Mbappe's back fit, but then I still don't like Mbappe and Vinicius Junior playing together because they both want to play that left hand side. Both don't track back, don't work. So you end up playing with 8 outfield players essentially, and you're asking an awful lot of the midfielders to cover that ground that those two, one, don't refuse to and just won't do it either. Kind of, well, they won't
But it's
refuse.
no coincidence that Vinicius' best form has come when Mbappe's out.
And vice versa. Because they both want to occupy that same area of the pitch, don't they? And they both don't want to track back. And both kind of ask not to track back as well. But you can carry one player, but you can't carry two in this day and age. You've got no chance. And Bayern Munich have got legs. They've got ability. Elise's brilliant on the right-hand side. Obviously, you've got Musiala, they've got Gnabry, they've got Luis Diaz. They can counter-attack, they can play a load of different ways. I expect goals because we know that Madrid, Courtois, I don't think he's fit either, is he? So it's a tough ask for Madrid tomorrow night. Really tough ask. You fancy Bayern Munich there and to score goals. They do score goals, Bayern Munich. They've got goal scorers, even without Kane.
I think that Courtois is massive. I do think when you're talking about the best goalkeepers in the world, there's no one I'd take ahead of him, I don't think, at the moment. I think he's been, and it always makes me laugh because people, one goalkeeper who's highlighted recently is Raya, obviously in his absence and his cup defeats, and he seems to get put on a pedestal that I'm not sure, he truly merits. I look at a Raya and I compare him to a Courtois, and I don't think it's just one level below a Courtois. I feel like he's multiple levels below a Courtois.
It's not in the same postcode. It's just...
Let's talk about Paris Saint-Germain and Liverpool. So Paris Saint-Germain are beginning to, with a team getting a little bit fitter, a little bit healthier, they're beginning to find a bit of a groove. They showed that against Chelsea. I think one thing, the one sort of takeaway I would have against that Chelsea game was, and it happened a lot last year, was just how clinical Paris Saint-Germain have been finishing. Their finishing has been very clinical, and it helps when you've got quality players, and they certainly have that in abundance. But is that sustainable? And they're playing against a Liverpool team who is looking a complete mess, James.
Yeah, we've talked about Liverpool, so let's talk about
But
PSG.
I mean, obviously, no Alisson.
No Alisson yet. So Barcoda's out injured, so they just played Desiree Doué, who's just a phenomenal talent. Dembele and Kiersvili on the left-hand side. I mean, what a front three that is. And then, obviously, no Fabian Ruiz, but they'll play Zaire Emery. So, yeah, I mean, it's... Yeah, the only thing about PSG, I don't rate their goalkeeper at all. I know they bought Chevalier, didn't they? But he's been dropped, and I can't actually remember the name of the keeper at the moment they've played recently. I don't rate him. I saw him in the Champions League, and he makes mistakes. He might make the odd good save, but clutching at straws here as a Liverpool fan, you might want to test him out a few times. But Liverpool are tactically a mess. Attitude's a complete mess on and off the pitch. It's tough evening down in Parc des Princes on and off the pitch. I don't envy Liverpool fans going to Paris after my experience there. It's not a nice place to go and watch football in French. And I don't care what people say. If you're an English sporting team, football team in France, it's pretty vile at times. And that stems from the French authorities and French police. But yeah, be safe, Liverpool fans in Paris on Wednesday night. But yeah, that's not going to be a fun 90 minutes, 95 minutes. Could could get very embarrassing very quickly.
Safanov is the Paris Saint-Germain keeper.
Yeah,
He looks garbage.
Yeah,
it makes you wonder how bad Chevalier must be playing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, the other games, Barca, Atletico Madrid. I always think these are tricky when the two teams have played each other as much as they have. What I would say is, Atletico, they really don't travel well, and obviously not having to travel far, but Barcelona have given them a bit of a thumping there already this season.
Yeah, there's no Rafinha, he's out injured, so Marcus Rashford will play off the left-hand side. Lewandowski kind of doesn't play in the league game, just plays in Champions League these days, Lewandowski, which is fair enough. But Picks and GD is 37, 38, isn't he? So, Yamal, he was a little bit annoyed with what happened on Saturday there, so he'll be up for it. There's no love lost between these two teams at all. I don't think there's any love lost between Simeone and Hansi Flick either. So, but yeah, as you say, when they know each other so well, as I said earlier, this is their fifth meeting this season. It's tricky, and they know exactly how each other are going to play. You know exactly how you're going to be set up, and you know exactly what's going to happen. So yeah, but yeah,
so that's Champions. So it's going to be a fascinating week of it, and as you say, particularly given the international break, so some of these teams will be coming in a little bit rusty potentially. Although, I guess let's wait and see. Thursday night we have Europa League. The two English teams are away. So Villa are away at Bologna, Forest are away at Porto. I think for Villa, they've played Bologna a couple of times and they've done fine against them. They're not great. I know they had a great result in the last round, but this isn't a brilliant team. Villa have to be beating the likes of Bologna over the two legs. And for Forest, tricky game to Porto. Porto are top of the Portuguese league, and I'm intrigued to see where Forest are at after a little break. They obviously had some big results, particularly that Tottenham one just before the international break. They obviously also had the comeback win against Midtjylland in the last round as well. So whether Forest can sort of kick on from that performance. The only thing I'd say for both teams is there's a big game on Sunday between the two teams, with Villa having to travel to Forest. So Forest aren't safe by any means in terms of relegation. So I do wonder if they do keep a little bit of an eye on that game. But I think what you said earlier in terms of being rusty may well see them picking a stronger team than you might suspect.
I think both teams will go full strength. I know they're away from home, but that 2.5 week gap they've just had, it is a big game for both teams on Sunday. It's quite weird that it's falling like this kind of thing. At least Villa don't have to travel that far on Sunday. It's not that long a flight to Bologna anyway. But it's only down the road to Forest. You know what I mean? You're back home by a reasonable hour on Sunday night, kind of thing. I think both teams, especially Villa, they'll go full strength in Bologna. They want to get. Tielemans hopefully hasn't picked up any. McGinn will back play, get some miles into their legs, and then try and play Cash at right back. No messing around. Play Pau Torres at centre back. Don't play Mings. Like, what are you doing?
So one player Villa will probably be missing is Sancho, who injured his shoulder in a friendly game over the international break. It drives you crazy. If you want some bad luck, injuring a shoulder in a friendly, effectively, it's just
you can
annoying.
pay your £35 million player, Harvey Elliott.
Yes, James. I do think it's actually nice that neither team's disadvantaged on that Sunday. So they both have away games. It's not a case of one team having a home, one team having an away trip in midweek. Both away in Europe. So in many respects, it's a bit of a leveller. Obviously, the other European action is Conference League. Palace are home against Fiorentina. I'm intrigued to see this game because Palace have been terrible in this competition this year. How they're still in it is just beyond me. and Fiorentina are one of the better teams left in it, so it won't be easy by any stretch of imagination. And we've seen Palace throw in some very, very strange performances in recent months.
Fiorentina will not be surprised. They just sit back and go on then, break us down, knowing full well that you can't break us down, and we'll try and hit you on a counter attack and get out there as a 1-0 victory or something like that, and come back. And obviously the Glasner issues with being a team that has to have more than 50% of the ball, more than 40% of the ball, you can't deal with it at the moment. We haven't shown anything at Palace to do that yet. So yeah, it's you never know with Palace. They've been, as you say, downright awful in the Conference League. Absolutely shocking. And they've played no one as well.
And yet the reality is that, they could qualify Europa League next year. I mean, great chance of qualifying for Europa League next year.
Yeah, another win, backing up the FA Cup and the pre-season friendly that they won at Wembley. Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's probably enough from us today. I look forward to us talking on Friday about. I feel like something's been missing tonight, James. I think it's probably talking about Tottenham's woes. It doesn't feel the same without taking a little bit of joy in that. But we can look back on those on the episode on Friday.
Do you reckon that De Zerbi will still be in the job by Friday, without even playing a game?
Big game, James.
It is a big game. On who have they got?
Sunderland. They're away at Sunderland.
Wayne to Sunderland, their first home game, isn't it, for De Zerbi? It's at Brighton at home next weekend. Yeah. Well, we might have to do a podcast on Thursday, Luke, when my favourite current head coach has collected his P45 and you can go to Ibiza for an even longer holiday.
It's all right, James. You just copy and paste clips from the last, 5 months. I'm sure people will love it.
Arne Slot. Thank you for the title last year, but please go and buy your holiday home in Ibiza, where you've been for the last 3 or 4 days during the international break as well. You had a nice tan, didn't you, Arne, on the Man City game? Yeah.
I don't think what people listening to this podcast realise is I genuinely hope Arne Slot stays for as long as possible, just to wind James up. I'm petty like that. But anyway, right. Let's wrap this up and we'll catch up with people on Friday. So just another mention is there has been a couple of podcasts with John recently. We will get John on to talk some football as well at some stage. But yeah, so there are other First Word in Sports podcasts out there at the moment as well. And as always, any questions, fire away. We're more than happy to try and answer them if we can.
Perfect, Luke. Yeah, have a good week all and speak to you on Friday. Cheers.